Reading aloud is one of the most important activities parents, grandparents, and caregivers can share with their children. Not only is it a wonderful time to bond with your child and share stories and conversation, but reading to your child will make an impact on their social and emotional development, their ability to learn to read, and their future success in school. By reading to your child every day, you will show them that reading is important and fun, and it will help them become readers. A child who is a reader significantly increases their chance for academic and lifelong success. You should begin reading to your child from the time they are born, because being read to is an important part of learning to read. It helps children develop language skills, increases their attention span, and teaches them how to listen.
I think we really want to emphasize that children need that experience with language from the time they're born on. Actually, it's very interesting. They need it, or it's effectual if they have that experience even before they're born. Dr. Brazelton has a fantastic experiment that he does with a newborn. He holds that newborn and he talks to that newborn, and mom is right over here talking at the same time, and slowly that baby's head turns toward mom because that baby in utero has been hearing mom's voice or dad's voice or whomever the caregiver is around the baby, that voice all for 9 months. So they need to hear language, from the minute we know we're pregnant, we should be talking to that baby and letting that baby hear a lot of language.
Early adult-child interactions have a dramatic impact on brain development. Researchers found that when mothers spoke to their infants often, their children learned almost 300 more words by age 2 than did children whose mothers rarely spoke to them. Exposure to language through television does not provide the same benefits. Infants need to interact directly with others. Children need to hear people talk to them about what they are seeing and experiencing in order for their brains to fully develop language skills.
There's a very interesting study that's been done and replicated many times that shows the more words a child hears in those very early years, particularly 1 to 3, the better they're able to think and process cognitively when they get to school. So we're really building a foundation.
Reading to your child will also cultivate their natural curiosity, develop their creativity, and teach them to use their imagination. Don't be discouraged if your child will only sit still for a minute or two. If you continue to read to them over time, their attention span will grow, and they will learn to sit and listen to the story.
We read fairy tales and Mother Goose stories to our children. It was the intonation and sing-song of our voice that kept them interested.
A toddler may not be able to read, but they hear the language, the rhythms and rhymes of poetry and story, see the pictures and objects in action, and learn that reading is something enjoyable to do. They begin to notice that we read from left to right, and that stories have a beginning, middle, and end, and that words have specific meanings.
As soon as the girls were old enough, at 3 months old actually, we propped them up with pillows and couches or chairs and put books in their hands so they could experience the joy of reading and looking at the pictures themselves. I would run my fingers under the words as they turned the pages and we experienced the story together. And it wasn't long until the girls were running their little fingers under the words and figuring out where the story was actually coming from. I really think that reading to our children at an early age developed their love for reading.
Children also benefit from parents singing and talking to them. Reciting your favorite nursery rhymes or childhood songs will help teach your child the sounds of language, which will help them to learn to read.
Parents that might struggle with reading may be hesitant to read to their children at home, and they don't need to be. I think providing children exposure to books, looking at pictures, just talking about what you see, talking about pictures, maybe even looking for letters that they know. Any exposure to books on any level is important.
It's really not important whether parents can read or if they cannot read. What's important is they have the book, they look at the pictures, they tell a story, they're interacting with their child based on what they're seeing in pictures in the book, and that's the essential part.
I have two kids of my own. I have a 3.5-year-old and an 18-month-old. When I was growing up, reading was something that was always very important in my family, so I wanted to start laying that groundwork with my own kids right away too. So the day they came home from the hospital was the first time that got to hear a story from me. I think it's very important that kids get exposed to books at a very, very young age. It seems that they really start to take an interest usually when they're about 1.5 years, where they're interacting and they're noticing a lot more, but they need to have books in their hands well before that so they're used to them. Kids who have been read to a lot before they come to school, they have a much higher vocabulary and they're able to express themselves much easier. I've noticed a big difference in kids who have been read to a lot. They have a much longer attention span when it comes to being read to in the classroom. In order for a child to learn to read, it's very important that they have some essential basics. One of the things they need is a strong vocabulary so they can understand what they're reading and they can make sense of what they're reading. It's also important for them to know how to use a book. That is, how to hold a book, how to turn the pages, where the front cover is, and where the words are on the page.
Research shows that if young children are ready with these skills, they are more likely to have a strong start in kindergarten.
A child comes to school with certain advantages if they've had early experiences with books, with language, with interaction with adults. It actually wires their brains so they're more prepared to learn. Now, children can catch up, although certainly it's a greater advantage to come to school with those experiences than trying to catch up. So whatever we can do for young children to give them those early experiences with books, with language, is so important to help them as they go to school.
By reading every day, parents can show children that it's important and fun. Reading isn't just about books. It can be magazines, recipes, newspapers, comics, directions, labels, and signs. The possibilities are endless as long as you're reading. If the parent has fun and enjoys the reading experience, the child will have fun too. It's okay to read books over and over. Kids love rereading their favorites. It's also okay if children make up their own story when they're browsing through a book. Make reading a part of your everyday routine. Bedtime is a great time to spend 15 minutes reading a book to your child. It can be relaxing for the child and the parent, and it can be a time to bond, connect, and communicate with your child.
All parents are busy raising their children, making a living, and it is so important to make that time to read with your children. Making it a habit, an everyday habit, just as important as brushing your teeth.
For the younger children, start with shorter books. Talk about the name of the book. Point out the pictures and talk about them. Run your finger from left to right, under the lines of the story. Even if you are not reading the words, you are showing your child that we read from left to right and that the words on the page relate to the pictures in the book. It is important that children are able to connect their own experiences to the events in books. Try to incorporate this throughout the day. For example, when your child does or says something just like a character from a story, point that out to them. Before you know it, they'll be making the connections independently. Try to read to your child at least 20 minutes each day. This can be broken down into 10-minute increments. One-on-one reading is the best, but family reading is also a wonderful experience that demonstrates the importance of reading and family time. One of the most important gifts you can give your child is the gift of language. Reading to your child, talking to your child, engaging them in conversation about everyday happenings. They all contribute to their ability to learn when they enter school.
Children that have been read to in their earlier years and at home tend to come into the classroom with a longer attention span. They have an interest in learning. They want to hear what you're saying. They want to learn more, not just about the books, but on all subject levels.
Reading to your child from the time they are born provides a solid foundation for becoming a reader themselves. The special time you share with your child and a storybook will translate to skills and habits that will last a lifetime.
Whatever we can do for kids before they go to school is going to enhance their opportunities to learn when they get there. Let's give them every advantage.
Parents often come into school asking us, what can I do at home to help my child succeed in school? And I think the best advice we can give them is to tell them to read to their children out loud as often as possible. Read to the younger children, read to the babies, provide books, if at all possible, from the library, from garage sales, anything you have at home. Just provide them books, even just to look at and explore and touch. Just exposure to books is huge. And don't stop. Don't stop reading to your children just because they've gotten older and they can read themselves. Reading with your child is a lifelong experience that will help them tremendously throughout their school. The important thing to remember is that the more your child has a love for interest and an interest in books, the more successful they'll be throughout school.